Imagine this. You quit your job, pour your savings into an idea you love, grind for 2 years, and then discover nobody actually wants what you built. What if you could see that truth in the first month, not the last? What if you could test your big dream like a scientist, spend less, learn faster, and make failure almost impossible to ignore before it becomes fatal? This is the promise of the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. In this audio, we're going to turn that promise into a clear, practical roadmap you can use for your own startup, side hustle, or next big project. Welcome to this narrated audiobook-style summary of The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I'm going to talk to you as if we're sitting together in a quiet coffee shop somewhere in the U.S. Maybe you're in New York, Austin, or Seattle. Maybe you're driving to work, walking your dog, or thinking about finally starting that business idea that's been in your head for years. My goal is simple: to give you the core mindset, tools, and stories from the Lean Startup in a warm, grounded storytelling style. So by the end, you'll know exactly how to reduce the risk of building the wrong thing, learn from your customers fast, decide when to keep going and when to pivot, and most importantly, how to turn your idea into a real, learning, evolving startup. So, take a breath. Let's dive in. Part 1. Why most startups fail. Let's start with a painful truth. Most startups don't die because the founders are lazy. They don't die because the technology is impossible. They die because they spend months or years building something nobody actually wants. In the traditional way of building a business, the pattern looks like this. You write a long business plan. You make detailed financial projections. You design the perfect product. You hire, you build, you polish, you launch with a big ta-da. And then the market shrugs. Maybe you get a few customers. Maybe your friends are polite and say, "Wow, this is cool." But deep down, the numbers don't lie. People aren't really using it. They're not coming back. They're not telling their friends. By the time you realize this, you've spent your money, your time, and a piece of your soul. Eric Ries went through this himself. He worked on a startup called IMVU, building a complex product with lots of features. The team was smart, hardworking, and dedicated. But when they finally released their beautiful product, users were confused, overwhelmed, or just not interested. That experience led Eric to a brutally simple question. What if the real job of a startup is not to build stuff, but to learn what should be built? That question is the foundation of the Lean Startup. The Lean Startup approach says, a startup is not a smaller version of a big company. It's a learning engine. Its goal is to discover a sustainable business model as quickly and efficiently as possible. That means your real product is not just your app, your website, or your physical device. Your real product is validated learning about what works. And that brings us to the core loop of the Lean Startup: build, arrow, measure, arrow, learn. Part 2. The core loop: build, measure, learn. Think of your startup as a scientific experiment. You start with a vision. From that vision, you create a strategy. From that strategy, you create a product. But every step is full of guesses. You're guessing who your customer is. You're guessing what problem really matters to them. You're guessing what they're willing to pay for. The Lean Startup asks you to treat those guesses as hypotheses, not facts, not truths, not guarantees, just hypotheses that need to be tested. The build, measure, learn loop is how you test them. Build. You create the smallest possible version of your idea that lets you test a key assumption. This is called the minimum viable product, or MVP. Measure. You put that MVP in front of real customers and observe what they actually do, not what they say, what they do. Learn. You analyze the data, compare it to your hypothesis, and decide what to change. Do you stay the course and improve, or do you pivot and change direction? Then you repeat. The faster you go through this loop, the faster you learn. The faster you learn, the less you waste. And the less you waste, the higher your chances of building something people love. But to really understand the lean startup, we have to dig into a few core ideas. Validated learning, minimum viable product, innovation accounting, pivot versus persevere. Let's start with validated learning. Part 3, validated learning, proving what's true. In a startup, learning is not reading blogs, brainstorming, or guessing. Learning is proving that your idea works in the real world. Eric Ries calls this validated learning. Here's what it means. You don't just say, I think customers want this feature. You say, if customers really want this feature, then when we offer a simple version of it, at least 30% of new users will use it in the first week. See the difference? You move from I think to if this is true, then we will see this behavior. That's a testable hypothesis. For example, imagine you want to build an app that helps busy parents in the US plan healthy weeknight dinners in under 20 minutes. You might start with a few assumptions. Busy parents struggle to decide what to cook. They would love a ready-made weekly dinner plan. They would be willing to pay a monthly subscription for that service. Those are your hypotheses. Validated learning means you build experiments to test each one. Create a simple landing page describing the service. Run a few low-budget ads on social media targeting US parents. Ask for an email sign-up or even a pre-order. If nobody clicks, that tells you something. If people click but don't sign up, that tells you something else. If people sign up and are willing to pay, that's powerful validation. The point is, you're not trying to look good. You're trying to get the truth as early as possible while it's still cheap. Validated learning is humbling. It will often tell you that your brilliant idea isn't so brilliant. But that's good news. Because discovering that early with a simple experiment is far less painful than discovering it after you've spent 2 years building the full product. This is where the minimum viable product comes in. Part 4. Minimum viable product, the smallest test that counts. The MVP is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the lean startup. Many people think MVP means low quality or half-baked, but that's not the point. An MVP is the smallest, simplest version of your product that lets you start the build, measure, learn loop and begin validated learning. It's not bad. It's just focused. You strip away everything that doesn't directly test a core assumption. Let's go back to our dinner planning app for American parents. Your full vision might be a polished mobile app, customizable meal plans, grocery integrations with local stores, nutrition tracking, fancy design. But to test your core assumption that busy parents want help with dinner, your MVP might be a simple web page where they can enter their email, plus a promise. Every Sunday, we'll send you a full weeknight dinner plan for your family, with recipes and a quick shopping list. Behind the scenes, it's not automated at all. You sit down on Sunday, write the plan manually in Google Docs, and email it. Is that scalable? Not yet. Is it high-tech? Not really. But does it test whether people want what you're offering? Yes. Eric Ries gives examples like a video demo that shows how a product would work before the product exists, just to test interest. A concierge MVP, where you manually deliver the service one customer at a time. A landing page MVP, where you simply check if customers will click, sign up, or pre-order. The key is this. Your MVP is not your final product. It's your first experiment. Now, in an American market where customers are used to polished apps and slick interfaces, it's tempting to overbuild. You may think, if it's not beautiful, they'll hate it. But remember, your early adopters are special. They care more about the solution than the polish. Think about early versions of Twitter, Airbnb, or Uber. They were rough, they were weird, they were incomplete. But they solved a problem for a small group of people who were willing to tolerate the rough edges. Your job as a founder is to find those people and learn from them. Once you have an MVP and some early usage, you move to the next part of the loop, measure. Part 5. Measure what really matters. If you're going to learn, you need data, but not all data is equal. In the startup world, it's very easy to fall in love with what Eric Ries calls vanity metrics. These are numbers that make you feel good, but don't actually help you make better decisions. Total downloads, total page views, total registered users, raw social media followers. You can convince yourself you're growing even if nobody is truly engaged. The lean startup pushes you toward actionable metrics instead. Actionable metrics are tied to real customer behavior and can guide real decisions. What percentage of users who sign up actually use the product in the first week? How many users come back the next week? What percentage of free users convert to paying customers? What is your customer churn rate? These metrics tell you if your product is getting better, if your customers are sticking around, and if your business model might be sustainable. Eric Ries introduces a concept called innovation accounting. Think of it as a way to measure progress when normal accounting, like revenue and profit, doesn't tell the full story yet. Innovation accounting has 3 steps. First, establish the baseline. Launch your MVP and measure where you are now. For example, 20% of users come back in week 2, 5% upgrade to a paid plan. Second, tune the engine. Make changes to your product, pricing, or messaging and see if those numbers improve. Maybe after a few iterations, 30% come back in week 2 and 8% upgrade. Third, decide whether to pivot or persevere. If your metrics are improving steadily, you may choose to continue refining the same strategy. If they're stuck or barely moving, you may need a pivot, a meaningful change in direction. The critical idea is this. You're not just building features and hoping. You're running experiments and making decisions based on evidence. And that evidence is tied to a model of how your startup will grow. Part 6. Engines of Growth. How your startup grows. The lean startup identifies 3 main engines of growth. 3 ways startups can achieve sustainable growth. First, the sticky engine of growth. Here, growth comes from keeping customers for a long time. The key metric is churn. How many people stop using your product? If you can reduce churn, your customer base grows because people stay. Think of subscription services, productivity apps, streaming platforms, fitness memberships. If your app becomes part of someone's daily routine, the sticky engine is working. Second, the viral engine of growth. Here, growth comes from customers bringing in other customers. The key metric is the viral coefficient, how many new users each existing user brings in. If every user invites just 1 friend who actually joins, and each of those brings in 1 more, the growth compounds. This is common in social networks, messaging apps, and products with built-in sharing. Third, the paid engine of growth. Here, you spend money on acquiring customers, ads, sales, marketing, and you grow as long as your customer lifetime value is greater than your customer acquisition cost. For example, if you spend $50 to acquire a customer who will pay you $300 over their lifetime, and you can keep repeating that math, your startup can grow through paid channels. Why does this matter? Because your engine of growth determines which metrics are most important for you to track and which experiments you should prioritize. A sticky engine focuses on reducing churn and improving retention. A viral engine focuses on sharing behavior and improving the viral coefficient. A paid engine focuses on acquisition cost and lifetime value. Once you have your engine running and your metrics coming in, you face the hardest decision every startup must eventually make. Do we persevere and keep improving? Or do we pivot and change direction? Part 7. Pivot or persevere. A pivot is not a total abandonment of your vision. It's a structured course correction based on what you've learned. You keep the vision, the big why behind your startup, but you change the how. Maybe your product is solving the right problem, but for the wrong customer. Maybe the customer is right, but the product format is wrong. Maybe people love using your product, but they won't pay for it. Eric Ries describes several types of pivots. A zoom-in pivot. One feature of your product turns out to be the only thing people care about. You turn that feature into the whole product. A zoom-out pivot. The opposite. Your product is too narrow. Customers need more to see value, so your single product becomes part of a bigger solution. A customer segment. Pivot. You discover that a different group of people gets more value from your product than your original target. A customer need pivot. You realize the problem you thought you were solving is not the real problem. Customers show you something more urgent. A platform pivot. You turn a single application into a platform, or a platform into a more focused application. A revenue model pivot. You change how you charge. Subscription, one-time purchase, freemium, ads, and so on. In the American startup culture, the word pivot gets used casually, almost like a joke. But in the lean startup, a pivot is serious. It's based on data, not mood. You don't pivot just because you're bored. You pivot because your innovation accounting shows that your current strategy is not leading to the growth you need, even after multiple experiments. Persevering is equally serious. If your metrics are improving, if more people are signing up, staying, paying, and telling others, then you stay the course, double down, and keep tuning the engine. The hard part is emotional. Founders often fall in love with their original idea, their baby. Pivoting can feel like admitting failure, but the lean startup reframes that. A pivot is not a confession of failure. It's a sign of learning. It means you're listening to reality, not just your ego. And in the end, markets reward truth, not fantasy. Part 8. Small batches, fast feedback. Another powerful idea in the lean startup is the importance of small batches. Traditional manufacturing often worked with large batches. You design a big batch, you build the whole batch, you then test the entire batch. If something is wrong, the entire batch is affected. But in software and modern product development, working in small batches is faster and safer. Imagine you're building a new onboarding flow for your app. In a large batch mindset, you redesign the entire experience, every screen, every message, and then launch it all at once. If something fails, you don't always know which change caused the problem. In a small batch mindset, you change one thing, release it to a small group of users, measure the impact, then move on to the next small change. This approach fits perfectly with the build, measure, learn loop. It's also emotionally easier. Changing one small thing doesn't feel like a giant leap. If it fails, it's not a catastrophe, it's a data point. In many American software companies, this is called continuous deployment or continuous delivery, shipping small improvements all the time instead of huge releases every few months. The lean startup encourages you to think like this, even if your product isn't pure software. Can you test one feature at a time in your physical product? Can you roll out changes to one store, one city, or one region instead of everywhere? Can you test new pricing or messaging with a small subset of your customers? Small batches speed up learning and reduce waste, and reducing waste is at the heart of lean thinking. Part 9. The 5 Whys. Getting to the root cause. Even in a lean startup, things go wrong. A server crashes, a key feature breaks, customers get angry, a campaign flops. When that happens, the natural reaction is to blame the surface level problem. It was a bug. Someone forgot. The market is weird. But the lean startup encourages you to go deeper using a simple tool from Toyota, the 5 Whys. The idea is simple. When something goes wrong, you don't stop at the first explanation. You ask why about 5 times to get down to the root cause. For example, problem. The website went down for an hour. Why? Because the server ran out of memory. Why did the server run out of memory? Because there was a memory leak in the new feature we deployed. Why was there a memory leak in the new feature? Because we didn't write automated tests for that kind of issue. Why didn't we write automated tests? Because we were rushing to hit a release deadline. Why were we rushing? Because our planning process doesn't include time for proper testing. Now you see the real problem. It's not just the server. It's your process, your culture, your priorities. The 5 whys help you build a culture where each failure leads to better systems, not just blame. In a startup, especially in the US, where the pace is fast and competition is fierce, this kind of thinking can prevent the same mistakes from happening again and again. Part 10. Lean Startup Inside Big Companies. You might be thinking, this all sounds great for a small tech startup in Silicon Valley, but what about big companies? What about established businesses? Eric Ries argues that the lean startup method is not just for 2 people in a garage. It's a methodology for innovation that can work inside large organizations too. In a big company, new products and services are often treated like mini versions of the core business. They get folded into the same processes, same budgeting, same planning cycles. The problem is, innovation needs experiments, not just execution. In the lean startup approach, a big company can create internal startups, small cross-functional teams, a clear vision, a set of hypotheses, freedom to run MVPs and experiments. These teams still have accountability through innovation accounting, but they move with startup-like speed. Instead of demanding detailed 3-year business plans, leaders can ask, what's your MVP? What are you testing? What did you learn this month? How are the actionable metrics changing? In the American corporate world, where disruption is a constant buzzword, this way of working can be the difference between staying relevant and being overtaken by more agile competitors. Whether you're in a tiny startup or a massive enterprise, the principles stay the same. Start with vision, make your assumptions explicit, test them with MVPs, measure real behavior, learn and adapt through pivots and perseverance. Part 11. What this means for you. Let's bring this back to you, the listener. Maybe you're already building something. Maybe you've just got an idea in your notes app. Maybe you're somewhere in between, watching startup videos on YouTube, listening to business podcasts, dreaming about freedom, impact, or just not having a boss. Here's how you can start applying the lean startup in your own life, step by step. First, clarify your vision. Ask yourself, who am I trying to help? What problem in their life truly hurts? What future do I want to create for them? Write it down in simple language, not corporate, not fancy, just honest. For example, I want to help young Americans in their 20s and 30s build better money habits so they don't feel stressed and stuck like I did. That's a vision. Second, list your assumptions. What must be true for your idea to work? Maybe they're actively searching for help. They're willing to learn from online content. They'd pay for tools or guidance. These are hypotheses. Third, design an MVP. What is the smallest thing you can build that tests one of those assumptions? Maybe a simple newsletter, a single landing page offering a paid mini course, a short, focused coaching call, a basic web tool built with no code. Don't obsess over perfection, obsess over learning. Fourth, ship it and measure. Get it in front of real people. American customers are used to trying new things. They see new apps, new subscriptions, new tools every day. The challenge is not, can I build this? It's, can I prove that anyone cares? Use simple, honest metrics. How many people click? How many sign up? How many come back? How many pay or say they would pay? Fifth, decide. Pivot or persevere. Look at your data. Look at your users. Look at your own energy and excitement. If things are improving, slowly but clearly, keep going. Improve the product, improve the experience, improve the way you talk about it. If things are flat and you've tried multiple experiments, consider a pivot. Change the customer segment. Change the problem you're solving. Change the business model. This is not quitting. This is steering. Part 12. The Mindset Shift. The lean startup is not just a set of tools. It's a mindset shift. Instead of asking, how do I make a perfect business plan? You ask, what can I learn from real customers this week? Instead of saying, I need more money to build my dream, you say, I need more learning to know if my dream is viable. Instead of feeling like a failure when an experiment doesn't work, you say, great, that's data. Now I know what doesn't work. This mindset is powerful in American entrepreneurial culture, where failure is common, but often hidden behind storytelling. The lean startup encourages you to fail small, fail early, fail inexpensively, so you can succeed big later. And one more thing, you don't have to call yourself a startup founder to use these ideas. You can be a solo creator on YouTube, TikTok, or podcasts, a freelancer testing a new service, a creator building digital products, a manager launching a new initiative inside a company. Anytime you're building something new under conditions of uncertainty, you can apply the lean startup. Conclusion. Your next experiment. We've covered a lot of ground in this summary of The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Let's quickly recap the key ideas. A startup's real job is learning, validated learning, about what works. The core loop is build, measure, learn, repeated as fast as possible. Use a minimum viable product to test your assumptions with the smallest, simplest experiment that counts. Focus on actionable metrics, not vanity metrics. Use innovation accounting to track true progress. Understand your engine of growth, sticky, viral, or paid, and optimize for it. Be ready to pivot when your experiments show that your current path isn't working. Work in small batches and use tools like the 5 Whys to improve your systems. Apply these principles whether you're in a garage startup, a big US company, or building your own solo creator business. Now, here's my invitation to you. Don't just listen to this summary and move on. Take one concrete step. Ask yourself, what is one idea I have right now that I could turn into an MVP this week? What is one assumption I've been treating like a fact that I could test with a simple experiment? Write it down. Design the smallest test you can. Run it, learn from it, then repeat. Because in the end, the difference between a dreamer and a founder is not brilliance. It's cycles of build, measure, learn. Thank you for listening to this audiobook-style summary of The Lean Startup. If this helped you see your startup or your side hustle in a new way, I'd love to hear from you. What experiment are you going to run next? Are you in persevere mode, or is it time for a pivot? Share your thoughts, your ideas, or even your MVP in the comments. You never know who might read it. A future co-founder, an early customer, or someone who just needed the courage to start their own experiment. And if you'd like more deep story-driven summaries of the most important books on startups, business, and investing, make sure you follow along, leave a like, and share this with someone who's thinking about launching something of their own. Remember, don't just build, learn. Then build again, better. That's the heart of the lean startup.